Hey, welcome back. In this video you will learn a new skill, how to create prototypes for your apps. So what is a prototype? A prototype is a preliminary version of your app. It's not the app itself. It looks like an app, but it's not the app. So a prototype is something you create before you code your app. Let me explain you with an example. Here on the right you can see the to-do app that we built previously, so it's a web app. And here on the left you see the prototype of that app. So normally, if you want to work on a professional level, you first want to build a prototype, which is this here on the left. So this is just a visual representation of the app so that you know how the app looks like. Now, we didn't built this prototype previously in the course because this is an advanced concept and we were covering Python basics, so I didn't want to divert from the purpose of those days. But now you are ready to actually learn to create professional prototypes. So why do you need a prototype? Why can't you just start coding right away? Well, by creating a prototype, you actually save yourself time, because once you create a prototype, and a prototype is easier to create than an app, as you'll see in this video, once you have the prototype, then you can just look at that prototype and then you can start coding, and coding will be easier because you have a visual form of what you want to do. A prototype can also be useful if you're working with clients or investors, so before you start coding your app, which takes a lot of time compared to the prototype, you first make a prototype and show the prototype to your clients or your investors. And they can suggest changes, and then you iterate with the prototype until they like the final prototype, and then you go and start coding. So let's learn how to create prototypes. For that we need to use a software, and the industry standard for prototyping is Figma. So please go to your browser, go to figma.com, and then you want to sign up for a free account on Figma. Once you sign up and you log in, you should be able to see this screen. So that's your dashboard. So Figma is a browser-based app. You can access it from your browser, but you can also download the Figma desktop app. Just search on Google for Figma desktop app, and the first search result should take you to the desktop app for macOS or Windows. So please download that and install the software. It's pretty straightforward. Once you have the software, then you can better work in the app instead of the browser. But both versions are okay. So if you prefer to work on the browser version, that's totally fine. So let me close what I have opened previously. I want to close everything here, and that will take me to the dashboard. So now I'm on the desktop app here. These are my existing prototypes that I've created earlier, and to create a new prototype you want to go to that new design file button. Perhaps in your version it could be named differently, it could look differently, because Figma can have updates once in a while, so you should press that to create a new blank document. So now I'll take you through how to use Figma, and I do recommend you to follow these instructions to get to know Figma, because Figma is also required when you apply for jobs. So apart from having Python skills, there's also another set of skills related to programming that you need to know. So these types of programming videos are focused so that you get a broad set of skills. Let's start. In Figma, we have this toolbar here. The first item here has several other items, and all these are for modifying your existing elements here on the page. Now we don't have any elements, so we're going to skip that first button. The second item, which is by default set to move, defines the way you move around the elements. Again, we don't have any elements, so we're going to look at that later. The third item, here is where we begin. This allows us to create a frame. So I'm going to press that. You can also see that you can press F to create a frame. So once I press that or I press F, then this plus sign shows up and I can draw my first frame in here. So what is a frame? The frame is actually the page. So we might have several frames for our app, depending how many pages we have in our app. For example, let's say we are creating a survey web app, a web app where we show surveys to the users. They can press buttons, check boxes, and this survey will have like several pages. So then we want to create several frames. The first page will be one frame, the second page of the web app where the user goes after submitting the results or so will be the second frame, and so on. And so we can stack those frames here horizontally. So we have this one, we can create another one, and so on. So let's focus on one frame first. Our app is going to have one frame only, so let's focus on this frame. If you click outside the frame, you unselect the frame. To select the frame again, you should click near the label here. So click there, and then you want to go to here on the right. So when you click an element, in this case a frame, the properties of that element show here on the right. And each of these properties can be changed. So you can click, for example, the X, which is the position of the frame, and you can type a new value there. What I want to change in this case is the dimensions of the frame. So for example, I can set it to a desktop size. So I press on desktop, and that will change the size of the frame to desktop pixel dimensions. You can double click over the label there and change it to first page, for example. And here on the left, you will see now all the elements that you have in your document. So we only have the frame. You can see the icon here of the frame, and the label of that frame is first page. Let's move on. The next item in the toolbar here is the shape item, and you have several shapes you can draw on your frame. For example, let's create a hamburger button here, which will expand the menu. So if you can recall it, we have this button here, right, which expands the menu. So we want to create that. So what I have just created now is one rectangle. So you can increase its size and so on. So I want to duplicate this rectangle. For that, you can press Ctrl D or Command D. Once you do that, the new copy will be appended on top of the existing one. So if you drag this down, you are dragging the copy of that. If you press again Ctrl D or Command D, the next item will be automatically placed below that other item. So we have those three rectangles. You can select all of them and you can change the properties of them. So we have properties for the size. We have auto layout, which we'll cover later on in just a bit. We have constraints. That's an advanced case. We're not going to cover all the advanced concepts of Figma now. And you can change the fill color of those rectangles. So make it a bit darker gray. And I'll leave it there. So now you can see that we have a tree-like structure here, where we have a frame here on the left, and the frame has children, so it has three rectangles in this case. So we have these shapes, and you can also draw freehand shapes. For example, you can use a pen to draw these shapes, or you can use the pencil. These two tools, so the pencil and the pen, are not usually needed. And so to delete these two drawings, you can select them and press on backspace or delete button on your keyboard. Next, we have text. So you can press on that item and then go here and drag the area. So this would be my to-do app. So that's the text. Now you need to select that and you go to the properties, and down here under text you can see the font size. So you want to change that to perhaps 64. If you want to change it to bold, change it from regular to bold, and so on. You can decrease the size of this box now to make it fit to the text inside it. And now we can also explain this scale tool here. So if you press that and you expand this, so that will scale the text. But when you have this move selected, that will move the border around that. So I hope that makes sense. We can add more text. This is my to-do app. So you see the app part went below the first part, so you can select the first part, expand it, and that will automatically fill in the text box. So to change the color of the text now, you can go to fill. So that's the color of the text. Maybe make it a bit more gray. And select it again to change the font to 40, for example. One more piece of text, you can always select that and duplicate it with Ctrl D or Command D, place it down here. This app is to increase your productivity, so that would be perhaps 25, regular, and that's it. Now, how do we make these checkboxes? Let me show you that. For checkboxes now we need shapes, and specifically we need a rectangle. So I'm going to draw a rectangle here. I think 35 by 35 would be a good size. So you want to draw like the dimensions approximately, and then you can select that shape and then go to the properties. So you want to change width to 35 and height to 35 to make it an ideal square. Now you can click over that again, and you want to have a border around the rectangle. For that you want to click the plus icon on the stroke menu here. So that will add this border. You can change the color to something else, perhaps like more grayish, and then you can remove the fill. For that you need to go to the fill menu, fill property, and you can actually press the minus button to remove the fill. To make the corners of this checkbox round, you want to go here on top. You see this, it's 0. You can make it 9, that would be a good size. So there we have a checkbox. Then we need some text next to that. So I'm going to duplicate this with Ctrl D, drag it here, throw the trash, perhaps. The box of the text is too big, so I'm going to decrease it around here. And then, so you want to make sure that this snaps to that checkbox, so that would be fine. And I want to duplicate this go in here, and this other checkbox, I'm going to mark it as checked. So we want to show to the user both the unchecked version and the checked version as well. So we need a tick mark symbol. For such symbols, you can use plugins. For that, you need to go to this item and then search for font awesome icons. So you should see this font awesome icons there, and you should press that and run it. So that should show this icons, and you can search for check here. So take that, press that icon, and you want to drag it inside here. Perhaps with the arrow keys you can select it and move it up and down with your keyboard arrow keys. And you see there's also this symbol here. You need to delete that. That was the label of the check mark. So now we have two types of checkboxes, a checked checkbox and an unchecked checkbox. Now I want to introduce you to auto layout. Auto layout is a grouping tool which will group several elements together. For example, in this case, we want to have each of these rows as one group. So because currently when I click something, the checkbox next to that is not clicked. So I have to select them and move them around if I want to move them both. But if we use auto layout, then we can just drag that without having to select it. So you can select both of those items, the checkbox and the label, right click and then go to add auto layout or press Shift A. So that will group those two elements together. You can move them around now. So then they bring them in here. Now for the next element, you should do it in two steps. First, you should select the checkbox and its mark by doing this, and then go to auto layout, and then you should select that grouped checkbox and the label, and then again press on add auto layout. Right. Now these are grouped, but you can still right click here, right click again, and change the text of a label. Now I want to duplicate this first checkbox again, drag it down here. You can follow the red guidelines in here. So 26 and 26 is the spacing between the elements. Again, Control D or Command D, drag it up here, maybe one more time, and yeah, there we go. You can make it more realistic by adding some different to-do items here instead of leaving everything the same label. And that's it. Finally, we need to add that input box here on our app. There are two ways to do that actually. You can either use a rectangle, but a better way is to use text. So drag it here, the size you want it. It's about this. And then you want to say add new to do, like that. Then you want to select that and you want to change the properties. So first of all, we want to go to text, and you can see the font size. Make sure this is fine for you. Then I want to center this text vertically. So I want to click on this, align middle. So now this is centered vertically. Next, we want to give this a background. So the fill is actually the color of the text. So since this fill property points to the text, we need to do something else to be able to change the fill of the text box instead. To be able to change the fill color of the text box, you need to turn this text into auto layout again. Once you do that, then when you click this, you are clicking on the auto layout. And then if you go to the properties, you add a fill now and change that to light gray, for example, maybe something bluish, somewhere in here, yeah. So that will change the background of that label. You can always change the text by double clicking, click again, and you can add more text. To make this auto layout bigger, you want to click there, but be careful because you see these purple reddish lines. This will change the padding. So if I change that, that will change the padding, the spacing between the text and the borders of the text box. So if you want to change the size of the entire text box, you want to click that text box, get one of these corners and expand that to somewhere here. To change the text color, you want to click again until you get the text. You can also see here on the left side what you have selected. So in this case is the actual text element, so you know exactly what you're working on. So with that selection, you can see here the fill is still black, so we can change it to something gray like that. Now you can round the corners of this text box. So for that, click the auto layout element, go to this and change it to perhaps 7, and that should be fine. You can use the same technique by creating a text and then using auto layout to create buttons, because this could also be looking like a button. And that's it. So to position this text, you can use this padding here like that, or you can access these paddings also from here. So you can play around with this auto layout numbers in here. From the left, the top padding, so let's change it to 10 for example, or 12, and so on. So that's the final version of our prototype. So at first Figma might look intimidating, but you'll get a hang of it after you use it a couple of times. So thanks a lot for following this. I'll see you later. Before we start coding, we want to draw a design first, and I did already draw a design by hand. So that's my design. And you might be asking now, well, did you not just teach Figma to us? Why are you using a sketch by hand? Shouldn't you use Figma for this? The short answer is no, you should not use Figma for this, and the reason is that this app is very simple. It's a personal app, and it would take you a long time to draw this design in Figma. It could even take you much longer to draw the design in Figma than it would take you to actually code this app. So in such cases, it's fine to just draw something quickly by hand. So I did spend only 5 minutes to draw this. So not always Figma is the right tool to use. In this case, it would be like using the crane to move a small package from A to B, when you could just grab that package by hand and move it from A to B. So this is what we're doing here. For personal small apps where no clients and no investors are involved, you can just draw a design by hand quickly. So our app is going to have 2 pages, the home page, which is going to look like this. So my photo, some text here, and the app thumbnails with their titles, description, and source code links, and then the contact me page. So I just spent 5 minutes for this, and now I can use this as a guideline when I'm coding. With that, let's start coding in the next video. See you there. Hey, welcome back. In this video, we're going to create a project in PyCharm and also connect that project to a Git repository so that you can keep track of the changes in your code. Let's do that. I still have my old app1 project open here. So to open a new project, go to your file menu and then go to new project. You want to click to the location browse button here and choose a place where you want to save your next project. So I want to save it in this folder, and here I want to create an empty folder. I'm going to name this app2-portfolio. Create, press open, and that path of that empty folder should be shown in here. So that's my absolute path, that's my folder. Then I can go to the next step. We want to use a virtual environment, so that setting is fine. Choose the version of your Python interpreter you want to use, 3.10 in my case. Feel free to use the recent version of Python if you have that. And that's it. I want to press on create. And this will ask you if you want to close the existing app1 project. Yes, that's fine. So I'll click on this window. Otherwise, if you click the button next to that, both windows would be open. Either option is fine. And that's an empty project. So the venv folder is there. To make sure that venv is correctly working, you can go to terminal, press the tab. You should see this venv text here in parentheses. That means the Python commands you enter here, or when you execute the code using that triangle, the virtual Python environment will be used to execute your code. So that is working fine. With that in mind, I can go ahead and enable the version control system Git. For that, you need to go to the VCS menu and then go to enable version control integration. We want to choose Git and press OK. And this pop-up window shows up. So a Git repository was created successfully. Then we want to create a .gitignore file. So this will be an empty file for now, .gitignore. Be careful with the typos. It should be in this form, .gitignore. Now, in this window, you can press this don't ask again to keep adding everything. In your case, maybe this window didn't show up because you had checked that option before. So if I press add now, gitignore is colored in green. So if it's green in your case, that's completely fine. If it's red, you should click here, go to Git, go to add it to the Git repository, and it should be green. So now in here we want to exclude the venv folder from tracking and also the .idea folder, which is where the settings of PyCharm are saved. You can close that .gitignore file, and then this time, we didn't do this before, but this time we're going to create a readme.md file. This is a file which accepts Markdown language, which works like this. So if you do what is this project and you use that hashtag there, that's going to display an H1 heading. So why do you need this readme file? Well, this readme file is going to be displayed in the GitHub repository when we upload this project to GitHub. So it's good to have some description of your project on GitHub so that when people visit your GitHub page, they can see what the project is about. So here is where you explain what this project is about. To showcase Python projects. You know, you could create several lines for that and several titles. Like you could use 2 hashtags for H2 headings, or 3 if you want to make it smaller, and so on. So this is known as Markdown. You can look for further information on Markdown on Google. There's plenty of information and it's a very simple language. So there are just a few rules you need to learn. and you did learn 2 or 3 rules already. So that's about the README file. So far we created a project, we checked if venv is correctly set up, we created a .gitignore file, we created a readme.md file, and the last step to finalize the setup of our project is to commit the changes, which means we want to record the first version of our program, so to say. For that you need to go to this button, commit, and here you need to write a message. Most of the people will write initial commit. So this is the first commit. Some people write it as first commit, or they write it create.git ignore and readme files and so on. But this is a more common accepted practice. So in this commit, we are recording the creation of these 2 files. So make sure that these 2 files are checked. If they are not checked, you need to go here, make sure they are green. So if they are green, that means they are added in the staging area and they are ready to be committed. That's why here in the commit tab, I see them as checked. So if I press commit, those 2 files will be recorded. And now in the Git tab down here, I see this initial commit. So with that, I have successfully set up my project and I'm ready to start coding in the next video. So see you there. Hey, welcome back. Now that we have a design for our app, the next step is to think about any data sources that we need to create this app. To answer that question, you should look at your design and try to spot repetitive items. In our app here, we do have such repetitive items. So we do have 20 apps here. So an app is this unit here, which has a title, the description, under the title, the image, and the link of the app, and this is repeated over and over again. So that means when we create our app should get these data from some sort of data files. It could be JSON, it could be CSV files, it could be SQL databases, which we'll cover later on in the course. These data are simple, they don't have relationships between them. So we wouldn't be using a database here. You'll learn later on when we need to use a database. So in this case, we could use CSV or JSON. Both would work, but in this case, I will use CSV and I'll explain why. So there are 2 reasons for that. First is that these data are not nested. They are plain data. So all we need is a table of rows, and each row is an app, and we have different columns with title, description, image path, and source code link. You'll see exactly how that looks like. So these data are simple, that's why I will use CSV, and also I will need to manually add those data, so to write down the app titles, the descriptions, and so on. So for that, it's easier to manually write them in a program which reads CSV files such as Excel, Microsoft Excel. With JSON, that would be more challenging. So JSON is not so good when you want to manually write data. Therefore, let me go to the project, and here I'll paste the data.csv file. You can find this attached in the lecture resources. This file, it looks like this when you open it in PyCharm, but if you open it with Excel, for example, or another program which reads CSV files, so I'll go to the folder where this data.csv file is, so that's the project folder. If I double click it, it will open with my default program. And so this file looks like this. That's the first app. It has a title, a description, a URL, and an image. So to app, that's what the app is about. The URL for now, it's just the same for every app because we still haven't uploaded these apps to GitHub. So later on, what you can do is after you have created your web app, your website, then later on you can just go to this file and just change that URL. And that will be reflected to the web app. That's why it's important to have the data stored in some sort of files instead of creating the data in your .py file, which we'll create in just a bit. So the .py file, your Python program should get those data from external files. In this case, it will be this CSV file. So lastly, we have the image names. These are the names of the images, and for that I'm giving you also in the attachments in the lecture resources, you have a folder called images. I'm going to paste that folder in here. So it's a directory with all the image thumbnails. So I prepared these so that you don't have to spend time on graphic design. And so each of these images, for example, 1.png points to the first app, to the app. Then we have 2.png, it points, it's the image for the portfolio website app. Then we have 3.png, it's for the third one, and so on. So the Python app, the code is going to read all these records and produce components on the website using these data. So please use this file. You don't have to write down all those data manually, but if you want to change something, you can also quickly do it in here directly instead of using Excel. So you can just open that file with your PyCharm editor or any editor you're using, but take care not to remove these semicolons because these are what separate the columns. So we have the title, a semicolon, the description, semicolon, URL, semicolon, image. And so that is repeated for every row. Now this is yellow in PyCharm because to do is a keyword. So PyCharm thinks that you are about to create a PyCharm to do here. That's why it highlights this in yellow or green. But still, this is actual data. It doesn't matter what color PyCharm gives to that. So with that, we're ready to go to the code. Now we know how our data are structured, so we can code our app around these data. And that's it for this video. Finally, we want to commit the changes. So go to the git commit button. This will be add data source and image files. So these are the two things we did in this video. We added the CSV file to our project and also the image files. So the image files and the data.csv file. So make sure that these are added to the repository. You should be able to see them checked in here. Otherwise, you should right click, go to Git, go to Add, and do the same for data.csv. Go to commit, press commit, and these changes will be added. But if you have this failed check here, you can click there and it will take you to this line. So PyCharm thinks that you have added a to-do there, which you want to look at later. So that's an unrelated topic. So therefore we want to press on commit anyway. And 22 files were committed, you can see it down here. So all the images and the data source. With that, we are ready to code. So we'll do that in the next video, finally. See you there. Let's start coding. So let's go to the project directory and we need to create a main.py file. Now, this project, this app, is simple in the sense that we don't really need to have multiple Python files. We don't really need a backend file for this because In this app, we don't really have any processing, so usually we create functions because these functions process data. But this app consists of just accessing the data and displaying those data here as components on the website. We're not writing any data. We're not processing any data. So everything will go inside main.py, which is located in the project directory here. So we have main.py, data.csv, and then we have images folder with all these images. These are the thumbnails of the apps. So we're ready to code. Let me close other tabs and keep only main.py here. So we have to code 2 pages. First, we want to code the home page, which is this one in here. And then we want to code the contact me page as well, which is this menu item here. And we're also going to have this navigation menu here where the user can click on the home page, they go to this page. When they click on contact me, they go to this page here. So let's start by coding the home page first. We have this photo here and this title and some text. So import Streamlit SST and install Streamlit with pip install Streamlit, or just hover the mouse here and go to install package Streamlit. It's the same thing, or you can also go to the Python packages, search for Streamlit there and install Streamlit. Streamlit is installing on my computer, so this will be installed for my virtual environment because I'm using a virtual environment. While the package installs, let's look at the structure of the web page, the home page. So here we have this photo and this other components here. And this looks to me like we have 2 different columns. So web pages can be structured column-wise. And with Streamlit, this works like following. It goes like this. We create 2 variables, col1 and col2, and that is equal to st.columns2. So we use this method, and this method will return 2 column objects. So st is the module, columns is the method, and now these 2 are object instances, column object instances. We can now go ahead and say with col1, we use the with context manager, which we saw earlier when we were creating text files and reading the content of text files. So basically you open a column here and then you say st.image. Image is also a method which produces an image object instance. Now this needs an input, this method needs an argument, and that is images/photo.png. So that points to the path of my photo, this one here. So I'm creating an image with that photo file. That is column 1, and with column 2 we want to add a title first. That will be my name, your name in your app. So we've got the photo, we've got the title, now we have this description, which should be some text about me, about you in your case. So that would be st.write for simple text. And here goes the text, but what you can do is first create a variable here. So since this is a multi-line text, it's good to use a multi-line string, which means you use triple quotes like that. And in here write something about yourself. I've got some text which I copied earlier on, so I'll paste that in here. And so then we want to write that string by providing that to the write method. With that, we can go to Streamlit and see how this looks like. So to run this code, you need to do Streamlit in your terminal, run, and the name of your Python file, main.py, in my case. So this doesn't look perfect, so we need to improve it. And for that, I'm going to increase the width of the container. So there is an invisible container which contains these two columns. And to make that wider, you should go on top of your script after the import statement. You want to point to st.setPageConfig. So this is where you write configurations about your page. In this case, we want to set the layout to white. Save with Ctrl S and refresh this page. If you think the image is too big, you have two options to change that. You can either edit this photo on your image processor program in your computer, or you can set a dimension here. In the image method, you can set the width to be smaller, like 300 or 600 would probably be better. So that will decrease the image size. But I'll leave it as it is, because later on we're going to have this menu here on the left, so that is going to occupy some size, some area, some space here, and that will push the image further to the right. So let's leave it like that for now. And about this write methods, you can change this to info if you want to slightly change this appearance of this text. So now this has this background color, and I think it looks better. So that's our first step with developing this web page. I think this is a good point to make a commit. So we did add some columns, the app is working fine, so it makes sense to add a commit and add a message such as this and press on commit. So with that, I think we're done with this video. Next, we're going to add the other two columns down here. So let's do that in the next video. See you there.